Good morning, everyone. My name is Olivera Jovanovic, and I'm the Director of the LLM and Master's Programs at the University of San Francisco. I will, in a moment, introduce my co-presenter and allow her to speak about her wonderful background and resume herself. But first, I just want to share with you the topic of today's and the focus of today's webinar. We're going to be speaking about LLM application tips. Our tips are going to be general, but we hope they provide you a lot of guidance in the process, and we'll include the link to set up a one-on-one appointment with us if you're interested in more specifics about your situation. So with that, I'll introduce myself and then turn it over to Julianne. I am a recovering attorney and a higher education professional. I obtained my LLM in taxation a few years ago, and I have spent about the last 5 or so years in, actually 6 in higher education, helping students navigate the LLM application process. Both domestic students who are interested in some of our taxation programs or more specific programs where I've previously worked in in intellectual property or environmental law, and then international students as well. Julianne Cartwright Traylor is our Associate Director, and I'll turn it over now to Julianne to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that you have decided to join us for this webinar. I've had more than 14 years of assisting prospective LLM students through our application process here at the University of San Francisco School of Law. So my background is in academia and in advocacy on the domestic and international levels, including at the United Nations, where I've been a consultant and a non-governmental organization representative for human rights organizations such as Human Rights Advocates and Amnesty International USA. So that is, I'm a political scientist by training, but I have taken classes, and my mentor in graduate school was the dean of UC Berkeley's law school, and he was my mentor because my area of specialization in international law is in international human rights law. So that is also my background, and I've been a visiting scholar, for example, at the International Peace Research Institute in Oslo, Norway for 5 years. And so that's what I bring to my work here at the law school.
Thank you so much, Julianne. So we'll jump right into some of the topics we're going to cover today. And we do want to leave some time. We've had some prospective applicants submit questions, but if you have additional questions, please let us know. I'll jump right in with the first topic, which is application planning. What many students don't realize is that the application process can be quite timely. Julianne and I will spend maybe 1 to 2 years working with applicants and getting their application materials ready. So for that reason, our first tip is to have a sense of your deadlines for general applications, merit scholarships, other required documents. Give yourself time to prepare a quality application. And for many schools, the application is going to be the only window we have into getting to know you, at least for the entire admissions committee. Admissions counselors such as Julianne and I will often speak with students beforehand, but committee members may only see that application. So you want to make sure it reflects you, your goals, and gives them an accurate picture of your ability. I tell students that you should sit down and create a timeline for each school. When is the application deadline? For University of San Francisco, we have a February 15th deadline every year for the fall start. What about merit scholarships? Do you need a separate application? And when is that due? Luckily for those of you applying to University of San Francisco, we have everything included in one document. So there's no separate merit scholarship application. It's all, you are all considered as part of your basic application for us. So there's not a need for you to do more, but it may vary from school to school. And that's why it's important to know what each school requires as a complete application, because your application usually cannot be reviewed unless it's complete. We like to have a holistic picture of you as opposed to a piecemeal picture. So the University of San Francisco requires your application form. This is biographical information, a summary of your educational requirements. We require a personal statement, 2 letters of recommendation, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. Official transcripts, which I do want to note in these COVID times can take some time to receive, and it may be necessary that they're translated as well. So if you have specific questions about that and about our requirements, I will strongly suggest that you make a one-on-one appointment with us, and I'll ask Margaret to drop the link into the chat. We also require proof of English proficiency, and that may sometimes be an exam or some other form, and Julianne will speak to that in a bit. And finally, we require a resume or a CV, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So, each of these documents should be given, and I'll use a lawyerly term, their proper due diligence. You are studying to be an attorney, or you already have experience as an attorney or in the legal world. And so we do have a certain expectation about the professionalism that each document will contain and the way that you prepare them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne, who is going to kind of talk a little bit about the lead time for letters of recommendation, and then we'll switch into talking more about letters of recommendation in general. Julianne?
Yes, thank you, Olivera. When Olivera mentioned devising and organizing a timeline, please make sure you include on the timeline getting your 2 letters of recommendation once you decide whom you're going to ask. They are probably all busy people, so they need to build in time in their busy schedules to write the letter of recommendation for you so that you can submit it in a timely manner to meet our application deadlines. So always keep that in mind. You're not only building your timeline, but you're having to include the timeline of your recommenders into that timeline. So Olivera, I'm going to switch it back to you to talk now about letters of recommendation, and I'll add some more comments afterwards.
Absolutely. I think the first question that we commonly get is what kind of letters of recommendation should you provide? And who writes it is as important as what they say. The University of San Francisco requires that your letters of recommendation come from one of 2 sources. They can either be academic references, and we'll define that a little bit more, or they can be professional references. When we're talking about academic references, we're talking ideally about your professors, but we understand that there are country-to-country differences in how close students may be to their professors or how intimate their professors might have, how intimate the knowledge that professors might have of your ability. So it can also include faculty advisors, other faculty at the campus or university that you've worked for, done research for, or had some sort of exposure to. And again, this is a good place to check in with us about, is this person a good person to write me a letter of recommendation based on my relationship? We'd be happy to talk with you about that. But what we're looking for really in the academic letter is an understanding of how you approached your studies before, or challenges or difficult projects, and how that's going to translate into your ability to succeed in the LLM program. You're intelligent people, but you're coming into a new style of learning for many of you. It's a different system. We can talk another time about common law versus civil law, but you're also learning in a second language, and it can be very challenging. So we want to make sure that academically you have the substantive skills to succeed in the program. So that's what we're really looking for behind an academic reference. If you have been working for some amount of time, we will also accept professional letters of recommendation, and that could be a partner or supervising attorney that you've worked for if you've worked in the legal field. It could also be a nonprofit where you may have volunteered and someone has supervised your work, so long as it's legally related. So if you have questions about who might be a good fit, like I said, that appointment is a good place to discuss it with us before you get too far down the road. You know, another example would be a judge that you may have clerked for. They might be a good person to write a letter of recommendation. But before I talk more about academic versus professional, we get too far into it, I know Julianne has a good example about really considering who you're asking and how to ask. And those are the tips that she would like to share.
Thank you, Olivera. A big decision is whom you're going to ask to write your letters of recommendation, whether academic or professional. And I want to talk for a minute so about how to ask a person to write a letter of recommendation for you, to give you some tips. As I said, they're all busy people. I have been asked to write many letters of recommendation in my academic career. And so I'm going to tell you, based on the personal experiences, what I require from the person who asked me to write a letter. Get a CV, a copy of their most up-to-date CV or resume. I asked them for that. I want to have the most up-to-date information. If they've already drafted their personal statements for the application, I'd like to get a copy of that to supplement any type of phone communication that we may have with each other. Also, to include a link to either the program they're applying for, the job that they're applying for, so that when I sit down to get ready to write my letter of recommendation, I want to have as much information possible so that I can write a strong letter of recommendation for them. So these are some of the things that I require to write a good letter of recommendation that you can ask your recommender to do, and to provide that person with as much information as possible so that they can write the most supportive and the strongest letter of recommendation for you.
I think you and I, Julianne, discussed this, the status of the person writing the letter of recommendation. We often see students who will opt for someone with a high title, impressive title or status, as opposed to someone who knows them very well. I think you and I both agree that when we're looking at letters of recommendation, asking your recommender if they want those documents, providing them, and also considering how well they can really speak to you as opposed to how impressive their title is an important consideration. Because we'd always like to see something more detailed from somebody who is maybe just a supervising attorney rather than the partner, for example, right?
Yes. And I say the bottom line, the content of the letter of recommendation is just as important as the status of the person writing the letter of recommendation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one tip that I'll throw in there that was not on our agenda, but should probably go without saying, no personal references. You know, a judge who's known you your whole life, or a, you know, attorney who's known you your whole life. We've seen them both on the JD and the LLM side, and we really want someone who can speak to your skills, whether academic or professional.
Right. We've had some letters of recommendation from classmates of students at university. And telling us what classes they took together. No, not the strongest letter of recommendation.
And that's why it's really important to ask ahead of time, because we can help you navigate those situations. Different countries, different systems, different expectations around faculty and supervisors. And with our experience, we've seen many situations, and we can help you navigate that. Absolutely. So let's turn to your personal statement or statement of interest. My number one tip here is just as each school is different, each essay should be different. So personalize your personal statement or statement of interest to the school. Make sure it answers the prompt of the university to which you're applying. And it fits in with our school's values or the program's values or goals, which are usually on the website or something that you can determine from speaking with us. But to see that extra level of personalization around our program specifically, it helps us get a better sense of how you approach this process and how you're likely to approach studying or other networking or other tasks or things related to being a successful LLM student, certainly. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen the wrong university's name slipped in. Students will often add a statement at the end. I'm so excited to pursue my degree at insert school, and then some very general statement that could fit any school. And while we don't want you to have your entire personal statement maybe focus on the university specifically, we can certainly tell when it's just copy, paste. So think about why you're applying to that school. And I'll turn to Julianne to talk a little bit more about how you address the LLM program and the things that she's seen in successful applicants before.
Yes, thank you. And I want to reinforce what you're saying is also to read the application instructions and follow those prompts very carefully. And what Olivera is saying also about making sure that what you submit to us is for us and not for another school or for another program. But in why, you have to think about why are you applying for an LLM degree. That's what we want to see in your personal statement. So to focus on your reason for applying for an LLM degree, what preparation you've had such that you want to apply for our LLM program. What are your career goals for after you complete your LLM degree? So we want to see those ideas reflected in your personal statement. We want to see it's more like a personal narrative. We see a lot of applications and personal statements, and we want to get more of an idea about you as an applicant in terms of your career goals, and in terms of your background, how you prepared for this. This gives us more of an idea of you as a person and as a possible student in our LLM program. So those are some of the ideas. And you can also look in the instructions to our application. Those 3 or 4 pages are very important for you to read. And as Oliver said, if you have any questions, you can always communicate with us. We can set up Zoom session, email communications. If you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, and we do get questions about, oh, whom should I ask to recommend me? And they give me some ideas. Or what do you want in my personal statement? I've talked about X, Y, and Z. And then we can guide them and say, oh, yes, that sounds great. Or maybe you should include more information about X, Y, and Z. So we're here to help you do all of the things that we're talking about, your letters of recommendation and your personal statement.
And with that, Julianne, I want to note we have about 8 minutes left. So we'll each give our tip hopefully very quickly, 30 seconds on the remaining tips, and then we'll open it up to some questions that we've received because unfortunately, Julianne and I have a hard stop at 8 a.m. So we're approaching that deadline. So I will jump into resume versus CV. We will train you to prepare a US style resume. If you don't have one, or you don't have a very good one, we'd much rather prefer a well-edited CV. The difference between them at a really high level is that resumes, very common in the US, are more competency-based, and they're used for job applications, and they're going to highlight your transferable skills. A CV tends to be more credential-based. It's much lengthier, and it's more about your education. It includes research certifications and professional affiliations. Whatever you submit to us, should be well edited, and that kind of jumps into one of my other tips down below, so I'll wait for a moment to get there. But do not try and create something, a resume, for example, that you're not familiar with if you've never drafted one before. They can be very detailed, and that's what we will train you to do in conjunction with our Office of Career Services once you're here. So do think about that when you are working on that part of the application. Julianne, do you want to speak quickly about transcripts?
Transcripts. We realize that some of you may still be studying law as an undergraduate, so you haven't completed your degree. What we require is just to submit the most up-to-date transcript that you have. And for the purposes of evaluation of your application, we will use that. But if we admit you and you decide to matriculate in our program, we will have to have that final transcript to show that you have indeed a law degree. So that's the main thing. Others of you who've already graduated or what have you, to send us your transcript, to have your university send us the transcript.
And to start early, because we've had applicants with a lot of delay around COVID.
Yes.
Our final overall tips are just about professionalism. We don't expect this from any of you, but we have seen it from time to time. The application form is a PDF fillable. It should be typed, not handwritten. Think about your formatting, submitting documents to us in a PDF version versus Word. We would prefer a PDF version always. And just the formatting that you're going over, the consistency in type and things and text and font size as you move forward. I do see that we have a question that's popped up in the queue, so I'll go ahead and answer that. It's because it's also one of the questions we received ahead of time online. Can we use the LSAC system to apply? The question we commonly get is, how do we apply? And yes, you may apply through LSAC. We recognize that can be cost prohibitive, so we also will work with you to accept direct applications. So if you have specific questions, here's the link on the screen to make an appointment with us. Or you can email masterlaws@usfca.edu and we can send you the link to make an appointment. And I know we get a couple of other questions. So Margaret, do you want to pick the maybe best 2 questions from our pre-submitted questions and we can address those today?
Absolutely, I would love to share. One of the questions that we get is, how long is the review process and how will I know if I've been admitted?
Julianne?
A review process, we say, is 2 to 4 weeks. But in general, we try to process the applications as quickly as possible because we know that you are waiting to hear whether or not you have been admitted so that you can make plans for the next phase of enrolling in our program. For the next phase, if you're international students, to get your visa documents in order. So we say 2 to 4 weeks, but we do as quick a turnaround as possible among our admissions committee members to notify you as soon as possible. So we say 2 to 4 weeks, but it's more like a week. And in some instances, if we can get the committee members together, it's even quicker than that.
And one of the things that's going to help optimize or make that timeline efficient for you is to make sure your application documents are complete. And what we often get is somebody who will apply and we're missing something, or we're waiting on a letter of recommendation. And so a complete application can be reviewed very, very quickly on our end because we know that you're waiting, and you'll find out from us because we will send you your admission decision letter via email because we want to make sure it gets to you quickly to the email address you use to apply. So if you want to make sure that's something that you check regularly, Sometimes students will opt for a school email address or something that they're not checking every day. Do make sure it's an email that you're checking every day, because we try and turn it around within, I'd say average is about 2 weeks, but within anywhere from a few days to 4 weeks, depending on how complete it is. We have time for one more question.
Yes, I believe this might be a quick one. Is one student asked, when should I begin applying? So it kind of follows what we were just discussing.
Yeah.
We encourage people, prospective students, to apply as soon as possible. Our application has been alive since February for August 2021 admission. So apply as soon as possible. Give yourself enough time so that if you are, to gather all of your documents, and if we do admit you, so that you'll be able to start the next step in our application process. And we do have application waivers that we give, and we also consider all of the applicants for scholarships. And so in that letter of admission, we also include our scholarship offer to you. So it's never too early to start. We do process applications later on in our application cycle, but we encourage prospective students to apply as early as possible. Absolutely. So that we have more time to work with you through our application process.
Because it does not stop once you're admitted. We will work with you through your visa process. We will share any knowledge we have about third-party scholarships. So we work very hard to make sure that we can make your LLM dreams come true at the University of San Francisco. That's our little bias, but we will use that time, that extra time we have, to make sure that this is as smooth a transition for you as possible. With that, Julianne, thank you so much for your time this morning. Margaret, thank you for facilitating. And to those who joined us and submitted questions, thank you so much. If you have further questions, please do make an appointment with us or shoot us an email. We are checking voicemail, but we're working remotely in the time of COVID. So I recommend email or an appointment is the best way to get a hold of us. And we look forward to working with you through the application process. And Margaret, thank you she just put the link to make an appointment in the chat. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to working with you.
And thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from you all. We're here to help you through this process.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.